for joining us on this video. I am joined by Katie and Jenny from Pledgeball. Hello, Katie and Jenny.
Hello. Very nice to see you again.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking the time to make this video. I hope people find it useful. Before we go any further, Katie, would you like to just say a bit about Pledgeball? Who is Pledgeball? What's the point of Pledgeball? What are you trying to do?
So Pledgeball started actually in response to my own personal feelings around climate change. I felt real despair in the face of it, felt completely powerless, and my partner felt the same. And so I started researching what, as an individual, I could do. I subsequently shared some of that and the associated carbon savings with my football team. I play in a casual league in Bristol, and I was unsure about what kind of response I'd receive. And actually, when I shared some of these things, and they were just, small things we could do, like switching to sustainable menstrual products, etc., and the associated stats when you put it into the numbers regarding the football team. And the response was really overwhelming. I mean, people were asking questions, and people now consistently rib me, but also send me in pictures whenever they're doing something that they think that, fits that sustainability criteria. And as a result of that, we then started Pledgeball. And Pledgeball initially was a grassroots tournament. The aim of it being to engage people and demonstrate to them the potential that we can have as part of a collective by making individual choices, starting those conversations around climate change. And we hosted this grassroots tournament. The only requirement was that to enter, you had to make a pledge. And then we awarded the team of fans a pledge to save the most emissions. Now we rally football fans across the country using the actual match day fixtures, spreading all across the football pyramid from Premier League to all the non-leagues. And in fact, we have grassroots teams also who get involved. And what we ask is that fans make one or a number of these pledges in support of their clubs each match day. The team of fans that pledges to save the most emissions wins the fixture, and the cumulative amount they pledge to save determines their standing within the Pledgeball League.
Give us an example of a pledge or two. What sort of things are you asking people to do?
So the pledges range from using reusable cup to going vegan 2 days a week to installing solar panels. There's about 65 of them on there, which means that they are accessible to everyone. Now, there was a question about whether we keep that many pledges because there's so many of them. But what some of our research has shown is that people have actually really enjoyed engaging with this pledge list, because what they found is that when they've gone on there, they've seen things they already do. And it just makes the impact of that visible, because it feeds back to them what quantity of emissions they will save compared to the average family if you carry out that pledge through the course of a year. They also see things on there that they can very easily do. And again, just didn't realize the impact of it. And then through that enjoyment with engaging with the pledge list, they then see the other pledges, and it starts to introduce this holistic awareness about the impact of a whole raft of different lifestyle daily choices in terms of your carbon footprint.
So you already knew you had a hypothesis about some stuff. What's the basic hypothesis that you're working on here, that this is a way to get football fans engaged with climate by committing themselves to do something, or what else?
Feel free to jump in here.
Yeah, I think it wasn't really on purpose that it came across like that, but basically what is happening here is that people just have a good enough excuse, or some at least have a good enough excuse, to start experimenting with those changes and just being able to voluntarily choose the commitments that you want to do or want to experience, explore. Made people quite motivated to get it, or made them interested in that, and just being able to voluntarily choose, and to also see what other things that they haven't done yet are possible to make them really engaged on the topic as well.
And I think the other aspect in terms of a hypothesis was, you mentioned behavior, but I think the mindset shift comes first in that. I think it's about shifting that relationship that people have with climate change. That's what we aim to do. So moving away from that sense of paralysis, because you feel as though you have no control as an individual, to realizing that actually you do have control, and you're part of a collective taking action, and that your own individual actions then feed into systemic change.
And why football fans in particular? What is there about being a football fan that means you're focusing on them?
Well, I'll start off here, but then I'll get Jenny to do the academic bit of this. I mean, as with the last point, there was no hypothesis when we started. And the reason it started with football is because I love playing football and I am really part of that football community, and it influences every aspect of my life, I would say, from my confidence to, my daily habits, etc. But then when I met Jenny, which was very fortuitous, she then, as part of her master's thesis, looked into the potential for mobilizing football fans around climate change. So Jenny, do you want to go into why football fans really occupy this unique platform from which to initiate change?
Well, I mean, as we all know, I think that with climate change, we need a lot of people to do environmental changes quite fast, or at least like create this acceptance for bigger structural changes to happen. And I mean, if we look at social phenomena, there's hardly any other phenomenon. Is it the thing? Yeah. Anyways, that brings together like so many people on such a regular basis. So I mean, I think it's FIFA who said that 3.2 billions of people out there are actually watching and enjoying football. But if we just look into our favorite football clubs, I mean, my club is Werder Bremen, for example. The stadium has a capacity to fill or to bring in 42,000 fans, I think. I mean, with the Pledgeball communication, we can see that like 42,000 fans doing, I don't know, maybe washing it 30 degrees, which is a seemingly easy thing to do, can have quite a big impact, right? So it's this regularity, the big numbers involved in football. It's like people from the most diverse backgrounds. So it's not just, I don't know, the Fridays for Future or School Strike for Climate kind of a person, but it's really just such a broad intersection of society, you can say. And yeah, as I said, emotions play a big role in football too, and people do a lot of stupid things also just in support of their football club. So why not use that as a way to get them to do great stuff? And I mean, there has been fans already who mobilized around, for example, discrimination in football, whether it be racism or homophobia. There has been the Safe Standing campaign, for example, in the UK. So now people are allowed to stand again. There's fans for food banks, so fans supporting local food banks. There has been a lot of supporters or ultra groups here in Germany last year, basically joining forces to help when there was the big floodings. And so they have already shown, or we fans have already shown, to be that source for mobilization. So why not also bring football in football, bring climate change into football here as well, because it's already impacting the beautiful game. So just need to make that more visible, I think, and Pledgeball provides a great opportunity to do so.
And I might be speaking out of turn here, so Jenny, again, jump in. But I mean, when Jenny looked at the kind of markers of success for transformational change, football kind of ticked every single one of those. So, collective efficacy beliefs, group-based emotions, social norms. And then, as she said, it brings in all these other aspects, such as the tribalism, the ritualistic nature of football, like you said, the regular engagement, that emotional identification.
As a football fan myself, I completely agree, in particular about the doing stupid things in support of your football team. So we Climate Outreach partnered with Pledgeball. Why did you want that to happen? What challenges were you grappling with, and why did you think Climate Outreach could help?
So when we first kind of came across Climate Outreach, it was there were kind of two aspects. Jenny had seen it and I had seen it independently, both looking at the kind of literature around the successful means of communicating climate change, the things that turn people off. And obviously we wanted that to inform our work. We met with one of your colleagues to talk about this, and he mentioned the Innovation Lab, which for us was kind of a dream come true, because what we really wanted was for our work to be evaluated from an expert perspective, both the communications and also the kind of the monitoring and evaluation that we do to ensure that, you know, from an expert's perspective, what we were doing worked, and find ways to improve that essentially.
Fab. And in your words, what were the different things that Climate Outreach did with you and helped you with?
So we chose a specific project to focus on. We are partnered with the Football Supporters Association, which for us is incredibly exciting. And in fact, I'm going to steal one of Climate Outreach's quotes here. I mean, one of your colleagues said at COP that in order to bring about transformational change, you need peer-to-peer engagement, credible messages, and messages that speak to underlying core values. And with the Football Supporters Association partnership, that's exactly what you get. So the Football Supporters Association is really widely reaching. It's an incredible association, and they have a huge membership. And this membership reaches out into, you know, all realms of the UK. And what the partnership involves is us working with the supporters trusts who, you know, are volunteers for the most part, embedded within their communities, and talking to them about their work already within their communities and the barriers facing their communities, and supporting them with advocating for pledgeable and therefore climate action, both within their own communities and membership and amongst fellow fans and at their clubs. With Climate Outreach, you guys helped us to develop that toolkit that we had a real difficulty with in a way, because we wanted to guide supporters groups sufficiently to advocate for pledgeable, but being confident about their own means of communication. They understand their communities, they're embedded within them. So it had to have that degree of flexibility that it could be adapted to each community, but making sure that we use that research that we know turns people off, for example, to climate change. So we worked on that. We had a number of workshops that were very dynamic, allowed for a lot of discussion, were very thought-provoking. With actually, you know, it was a really nice opportunity to be able to draw on Jenny's research specifically around football fans, and obviously Climate Outreach's work, which looks at particularly segmentations within the British public, and discuss differences, controversies, and also similarities, and then take that forwards.
One of the things that we found so great about working with Pledgeball, as you say, was learning from you as much as you were learning from us. So very much learning together, because the amount of work that Jenny and the team had already done on engaging with football fans was really good. So I just wanted to say thank you for bringing as much to it as that. So what would you say you're doing differently, or you're trying to do differently as a result of our support? If you could capture a couple of things that we helped work on together.
So I've just looked back over my notes actually from both the workshops and from a recent really brilliant focus group I had with members of the Football Supporters Association who'd looked at the toolkit. And one of the key things that really struck out was validation first. So validating the work that these communities already do, demonstrating to them the impact they already have. Fans' voices, absolutely key. You know, making sure that within there are stories from each of those communities so that people can relate to them. You know, something that when I say it now seems really obvious, but we didn't do to start with. We've really made sure that we avoid certain buzzwords and made sure that how we try to frame things is more relevant to the local community. So for example, where we talk about air pollution rather than emissions in general. I think those would be the key things I draw out of there.
I would also say, like, the confidence to speak about it. I mean, just knowing that it's really I mean, we already saw that when I was lucky enough to do my thesis using also Pledgeball as my case study, but just knowing that there is, I mean, so much expertise out there with climate outreach, and being able to situate Pledgeball within that large amount of research that is already out there, which I would also encourage every organization to really look into, because whether it's football fans or any other community, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, which is quite good because we also don't really have the time to do so, but just really engaging with this existing research, trying to make sure that your organization, your strategy actually has the impact that you hope you have, is like so important. And I think that really gave us at Pledgeball just a very good foundation to also argue for Pledgeball and why it is good to partner with us. And just, yeah, I think the confidence really increased, and it just gives you the security that what you do actually has an impact. And I think that's just so important when it comes to climate change.
Well, thank you for your kind words, which is very much appreciated. But I do repeat that, you know, we learned as much from you guys, and all the wealth of work that you've done to understand how to engage football fans was just, yeah, it's very inspiring. I suppose the acid test, or maybe it's too early to say, but what differences have you seen in terms of how people may engage with pledging or Pledgeball or climate conversations at football clubs?
I think this is really hard to answer right now. So it would only be anecdotal. I mean, obviously, I'm an M&E strategy going forwards means that we want to do a really in-depth piece of work around this. Jenny, I don't know if you've got anything. I could see that you're about to add something.
Yeah, I was just, I mean, not linked to this FSA toolkit now, but when I had the chance to interview the first fans who actually experienced Pledgeball and who were engaged with it, I mean, they just all of a sudden started to, well, first of all, talk to their fellow fans about climate change, which they haven't done before. So they used their WhatsApp member groups, for example, to share vegan recipe ideas, or like just ask each other, have you pledged, right? So it was just kind of a fun thing for them to talk about, and like really just telling others in this WhatsApp group, okay, that's what we can do, let's do this. So they were super excited about it. But also, what was the other thing that I was going to add? I think I lost it. But yeah, just from the research that I did, like talking to some fans and qualitative interviews, that was really, yeah, engaging. And they used this Pledgeball, especially the league table that we have, that really shows that more fans, not just one individual fan, cares to also talk to their clubs. And even the club was like seeing it, and they were like, okay, hold on, our fans actually do care about this, while this club was already quite progressive one. But still they were like seeing, okay, it is a topic, we can talk about it. And they, being a semi-professional football club, even started to have conversations with the public transport to make sure that people have it easier to come by bus, for example, to the matches. Also looking into reusable cups on match days and stuff like this. So it really, like, just seeing that people do care really enabled those conversations to happen.
Sorry, I think I misunderstood the question. Did you mean the acid test of the Pledgeball mechanism working, or our partnership with Climate Outreach and the acid test impact?
Well, I think both, because the partnership with Climate Outreach was designed to help you kickstart something where fans are having more conversations amongst themselves, and if I remember rightly, that was the key point of it. So it's kind of both, really. You know, the work that we specifically did, can you see it leading anywhere? But in general, bearing in mind that it was based on sound underlying research, is it starting to take off?
Yeah, so I mean, if I build on what Jenny said, because that was the research prior to the partnership with Climate Outreach, and then I'll kind of go on beyond that partnership, because as I said, you know, my answer reflected the fact that as of yet, we haven't done any research post our partnership with Climate Outreach, but that is obviously within our M&E strategy for this year. So as Jenny said, people really enjoyed getting involved with it. In addition to what she said about the conversations and the enjoyment and engaging and being able to take this to the clubs, you know, people also came back saying that it gave them an instant raised consciousness. And I think I mentioned this, you know, before when I talked about the pledge list. It started to introduce to them this kind of carbon currency they started carrying as they went about their daily lives, you know, having this, not just this monetary consideration when you buy something, for example, but being aware of the impact of that. It also made them, as Jenny said when she referred to the league table, much more optimistic, seeing that they were part of this community of people taking action. So not just fellow fans, but also, as she said, you know, fans across the country from the league table. It shifted their relationship with change in general, actually, going even beyond the environmental aspect, away from that negative response that people generally have with regards to change. They actually really enjoyed experimenting. You know, Jenny talked about the WhatsApp group. They just enjoyed sharing vegan recipes and the products of what they've made. And it also, you know, made them more aware of their place in a broader social context. Following on from the partnership with Climate Outreach, I mean, certainly we've seen much more engagement. The anecdotal response to the work that we do is incredibly positive. I mean, we hosted this focus group the other evening with members of the Football Supporters Association, asking them to feedback on the toolkit that we developed alongside Climate Outreach. And Dr. Mark Doidge, who is a trustee and research fellow at the University of Brighton and is an expert in football fandom and has written a lot of papers on mobilising football fans around specific causes. He ran it for us. And I mean, he contacted me afterwards to say it was very positive. So maybe we didn't get the constructive criticism that we needed, but it was also really nice to hear, because in fact, all of the supporters' trusts got incredibly excited as they envisaged applying the Pledgeball work within their own communities. And only, I think, 2 of them had been previously familiar with Pledgeball. So their experience of Pledgeball had been entirely through the toolkit. And we'd use Climate Outreach's training and your input to write this. So obviously you'd assist us completely with the main copy. As I said, it started off with validation. So we looked at work that football fans have done, for example, you know, rallying around food banks, against the European Super League. It also really included a lot of fans' voices. So we used a lot of the examples that supporters' trusts had used when they'd advocated for Pledgeball. And yeah, I mean, when I look at my notes from that, it was just incredibly positive, and they came up with loads of ideas about how they could then run with this within their own communities. And as I said, that was one of the key things for us, was that they took this and used it, but adapted it to their own community. So that must have done something right.
It's superb to hear, because I remember so much of our focus when George Marshall was delivering the workshop for you, so much of the focus of that was the voices of the people who ostensibly should be leading the conversation, but that's so important to bring that out. So it's really good to hear that that theory is grounded in what happened. I guess the last question is what the big challenges for you are going forward. So the things you need to crack next, and I suppose also lessons you would give to other organizations trying to do something similar, maybe in a different field, but things you've learned along the way.
Yeah, we need some money. That's our first big one. Yeah, we need some funding. In terms of barriers, I mean, one of the big things for me that's been a constant kind of niggle is whether we went about this in the right way. So when you look at our website currently, it doesn't reflect, and I've been told this on numerous occasions, it doesn't reflect the integrity behind this work. And I still believe that we've gone about this the right way, making sure that we did all the research and all of that has gone into it first. But the issue for us has been maybe we haven't pushed or accelerated as quickly as we could have done if we'd focused more on the public face of things. Again, like I said, I still think there's time, you know, that this was the right way round, but that has been a big issue for us, because I think when you first look at it, unless you have us explain it and pitch it, it doesn't necessarily grab you, and it doesn't grab funders, it doesn't grab commercially, it doesn't grab professional football. So that aspect was a real juggle for us. Other main barriers going forwards. I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's the funding that leads into all of it, because I mean, the other aspect of the work of the partnership with Climate Outreach that we haven't gone into was that obviously it also brought in M2, who looked at our M&E strategy and talked about that with us. And actually, you know, we're very positive about our M&E strategy, but that continues to be a really core theme of ours, because there's no way of knowing if a behaviour change campaign actually works in the immediacy. There's no way of proving that you've actually had a sustained impact on mindset and behaviour change unless you carry out this thorough research. But obviously that requires funding. Now, we currently consist of 20 volunteers, and we're lucky enough, obviously, to have Dr. Mark Doidge as our trustee, to have Jenny as our research and development consultant, and to have a number of other master's students to also help us with that M&E strategy. But everybody else has full-time jobs. And so to do that thorough piece of work, we need to make sure we have the resources. I guess other barriers would be, with regards to looking at football, there isn't necessarily the obvious drive to give necessary resources and capacity to sustainability. So when you meet a lot of people responsible for sustainability at football clubs, they generally have another role and they've just decided they want to take this on. Now that will change and is changing already, and some football clubs do have head of sustainabilities, but it's often a battle for space, capacity, whether it's comms space, whether it's space on a calendar, whereas actually this needs to be at the forefront. And they are starting to see that this is necessary. You know, actually commercially, there's obvious evidence out there that genuinely addressing sustainability increases revenue, but it's still slow to get there. I think what we need are things like this being introduced into licensing. So it has to be something that is a top priority for clubs so that they can then justify spending the money to have someone who is specifically assigned to focus on environmental sustainability.
Yeah, we haven't talked much about the evaluation, and just something that I'd like to say about that is I really enjoyed the work with you and with M2 when we were thinking about something that everyone listening to this will grapple with, which is the difficulty of trying to understand changes in mindset over a sort of longer period of time and how you do that. And something that we've developed the labs measurement framework off the back of our work with you, which is, thank you very much for that. And it's one of the reasons it's useful to have this call now 6 months after we did the work, because it allows us to sort of go, well, how are things started to change? And I hope as you go forward, you'll keep in touch and let us know what you've learned. And it will almost certainly be, there'll be some things that you can say, yeah, we thought that might happen and it did. And then some other things you'll have absolutely no idea they were going to happen and they did. And that's kind of part of the challenge. Is there anything else you'd like to say before I end this lovely chat?
I mean, you have no worries about us staying in touch. We'll definitely be taking you up on your offer to run things past you. And we hope actually, you know, that there's really detailed collaboration going forwards, because it was really an incredibly useful process for us, and has allowed us to really develop a lot of areas in detail. So thank you very much.
Thank you both very much. If anybody has watched this video and is inspired by what you do, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So the website is pledgeball.org, and please do contact us for whatever means at info@pledgeball.org.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop that record.